Alright, so tell me everything.
Where to start? So, you know the darkness, right?
Yes.
So, it wasn't entirely cut and dry like it is now, with the darkness, with the creatures who roam this hellscape of a world.
Yes.
It was, well, peaceful, as one would guess. Until, well, a certain Yellow Steve came along. The Yellow Steve in question being a Yellow Apprentice.
Apprentice of all people. Interesting.
Yeah. It was shocking for everyone when we figured it out.
Yes.
But essentially, what it was, well, the king, the Yellow King, he had two Steves at his side, one being his assistant, the other being the apprentice. And it came time for the Yellow King to step down due to age and all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
And instead of choosing his apprentice to replace him, he chose the assistant. And the apprentice didn't take too kindly to that.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah. But I doubt you would attempt to assassinate your leader.
What? What? Oh,
Yeah.
that's
He,
disrespectful.
one night he attempted to kill the leader and was ultimately thwarted by his personal guard.
Wow.
And for that, instead of being executed, he was banished.
Giving a pat on the back. I guess that's
A slap on the wrist, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically. Because of that, he came back. But not as the Yellow Steve, as the Solar Knight. Someone who gained a mass following. Someone who ended up having a larger following than the king did, I guess you could say. Because in the end, it really didn't matter what happened with the king years ago. Because eventually the king would fall. Just not the way we thought. But during this whole masquerading as, well, the Solar Knight, he was eventually stopped somehow, even with all the fake him. He eventually was stopped by someone called the Last Hope.
The Last Hope. Interesting. Never heard of this entity, but okay. Good for the Last Hope. Good for the Last Hope. But how did all this stuff go down then? If Solar Knight's gone.
Well, we're getting to that. Essentially, during his imprisonment, everyone had a bright idea. All the leaders came together and had the idea to form a hero, a brand new hero, one that would protect this world against all evils. And for that, they needed crystals.
Crystals.
Yeah,
Oh, wait, the shards? Were those the crystals?
the crystals, the shards, yeah. But this was long before they were just the shards. At one point, they were full crystals, but the yellow crystal didn't last very long. You see, during the night that the crystals were being made, which the crystals' creations themselves are kind of dark to an extent.
Dark to a extent.
Yeah,
How so?
basically, all the leaders of every color ended up having to sacrifice themselves, their bodies, energy, even their souls. They didn't even get to go to the world beyond. They had to sacrifice everything to become these crystals. This crystal, the shard that I'm holding, is once a piece of someone you probably knew. Just someone lost to time.
Interesting. I never knew about that, about the crystals.
Very few people did. But the thing is, while the night was, well, at its darkest, the apprentice escaped. He escaped his cell, and, well, he went to go, well, finish the leader. And what he found wasn't the leader, it was the crystal. And feeling its energy, he decided to absorb it, becoming, well, a wielder of darkness, otherwise known as Void Steve.
Whoa. So, he became the most powerful Yellow Steve.
Well, I wouldn't say he was a Yellow Steve at this point.
So, what happened to Rainbow Steve if the Yellow Crystal didn't exist anymore?
Well, you see, the crystals, they were made from the strongest Steves of each color. So what they had to do is find well, who would have been the third strongest, but ended up becoming the strongest due to, well,
yes.
technicality. And
Sacrificed them.
he sacrificed himself, yeah. And, well, Rainbow Steve was made. But they didn't account for how powerful Void Steve was. And he ended up getting to the Yellow Steve before he could become a crystal. Essentially, well, he was touched by darkness.
So, what you're telling me is, before he was fully a crystal, Rainbow Steve was created, but the Yellow Steve was still destroyed by darkness.
No. What it was the Yellow Steve that became the crystal
Yes.
had dormant darkness within him, which didn't take effect for the longest time. Even after he was defeated, even after Void Steve was defeated, and the Yellow Steve, which was known as Void Steve, well, even after he fell, well, the darkness stayed, but a few, I don't know how long it's been at this point, but it eventually took hold. Even after multiple Steves, not just Rainbow Steve, even after multiple people who were extremely powerful tried to stop the darkness, it was in vain. It was already too powerful. The darkness was feeding off of Rainbow Steve and all the other chromatic Steves that it touched.
Oh, okay, but who was the other heroes that helped Rainbow Steve?
Well, there was a Light Steve, I believe, or at least that was planned. I don't know entirely what became of him. He was probably destroyed because he was the entire opposite of the darkness. But as for the others, well, there was another Indigo Steve, or someone who was an Indigo Steve, according to the library that I found at one point.
Yes.
He was ultimately, well, one of the strongest Steves in history ever, but Void Steve destroyed him. But he did split into two others, which ended up becoming Time and Elemental Steve. But even they were susceptible to darkness. They fell.
So what happened to Rainbow Steve? What's going on with Rainbow Steve in the Last Hope? What?
No one knows what happened to the Last Hope. Not entirely. In Rainbow Steve, he's the catalyst.
The catalyst.
I'm pretty sure he is.
The shards. How
I
does?
don't know what's become of him.
So,
As
but
of
Rainbow Steve was created from the shards, which were originally the crystals. So how did the crystals become the shards?
well, Rainbow Steve, he did end up having to separate, but it wasn't a full-on separation. He kept some of the power, letting him remain as Rainbow Steve to an extent, just not entirely him. And a rainbow crystal emerged from the separation, one bound together by the darkness, but it wasn't touched by the darkness besides the binding. And due to stress, it shattered. Right now, all I have is the purple crystal shard, but because of you, all the others, I don't know what became of them.
So who controls the darkness now?
To be honest, I don't entirely know. All I know is he goes by the name Apocalypse Steve. And because of him, this world, very few parts of it see life. The ocean, this is one of the few places that are untouched. You can see squid, salmon, maybe even every now and then you might see cod or clownfish maybe. But everywhere else, it's all it's all wasteland. Just before I became, or not became, I went to but whenever right before I found you, I had to fight darkness just to even find, well, an entry point that I could use to teleport in. Like, I'm surprised that there's hardly anyone left.
But where do you fit into all of this? What are you? You're hiding behind a cloak.
That's for you to find out later. Right now, we really need to find the other pieces.
Alright, Mr. Spiritwalker, let's go find these shards.
Indeed.